Well, while the head of G4S was being grilled by one parliamentary committee, another had it in front of it the Governor of the Bank of England, Sir Mervyn King. And the Treasury Select Committee gave him no easier ride. Under repeated questioning, Sir Mervyn insisted that the first he knew of the manipulation of interbank interest rates, the Libor, was 2 weeks ago, and that the US authorities had not shown him any evidence of wrongdoing when they raised concerns in 2008. Meanwhile, at a Senate hearing across the Atlantic, the head of the Federal Reserve said the Bank of England had been told of Barclays Libor issues that year. Here's Joe Lynam.
This Libor banking scandal is increasingly resembling a Mexican shootout, except unlike the spaghetti westerns, the goodies are shooting each other. The initial baddie, Bob Diamond, was gunned down last week. Then his deputy, Jerry Del Messier, bit the bullet. Ironically, the Barclays chairman, Marcus Aegis, was fatally shot only to rise from the dead, for now at least. With the baddies out of the way, the sheriffs seem to be aiming at each other. The chair of the Treasury Select Committee wanted to know from the FSA and the Bank of England how Bob Diamond was eventually forced out.
You were handing the chairman of Barclays a revolver, and you were telling him to go and shoot his chief executive.
I thought that the most likely result would be that Bob Diamond would resign.
Right. But in fact what he did is he did take the revolver and he decided to shoot himself.
Yes, and as I said last night, I think that was an honourable thing to do. I think Mr. Aegis thought it was the right thing to do. It was not what I was expecting him to do.
But while the Bank of England Governor Mervyn King didn't like using weapons, he was sticking to his guns on the circumstances of Mr. Diamond's departure after the Libor scandal had broken cover.
I don't like these firearms analogies, and they're false. The question was left absolutely with them. I made it very clear, and I finished the meeting by saying, I would like you to make clear to the board that the regulators have expressed these concerns, and the board as a whole needs to know that they are very concerned and have lost confidence in the executive management. I did not know what the outcome of that meeting would be. It was left to them to discuss it with their board.
But when it came to when the governor first knew that Libor had been systematically rigged...
The first I knew of any alleged wrongdoing was when the reports came out 2 weeks ago.
That seemed to clash markedly with a different sheriff who was giving evidence to a different set of elected officials. The Fed chairman, Ben Bernanke, said his team had been tipped off about Libor being deliberately underreported as long ago as 2008.
It was in the process of gathering market intelligence when it received information about Libor submissions, notably a phone call on April 11, 2008, in which a trader in Barclays, New York, told an employee of the Federal Reserve that he thought that Barclays was underreporting its rate. The New York Fed also communicated with the FSA and the Bank of England in the United Kingdom.
The Bank of England Governor Mervyn King concedes that he was aware of problems with the Libor rate setting 4 years ago, but he denies that he knew of any willful manipulation or corruption of the rate until a month ago, when all the rest of us were made aware of it. The problem for the governor is that, at the very least, he looks naive for not having at least suspected fraud 4 years ago, when his opposite number on the other side of the Atlantic was tipping him off.
If you think about, say, a court case where offenders come up again and again and get let off by the same judge again and again, would you not question the ability of that judge to remain in office? Should there not be questions, given the testimony we've seen within the FSA, by the FSA and the Bank of England, that something just does not stack up? The regulation has not worked. The system has clearly failed, and something needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. When you see the regulation in the US, when you see the action in the US, things seem to happen, and they seem to happen quickly.
And we saw another example of that today. Yet another British bank accused of willfully ignoring the rules for commercial gain. HSBC this time was in the dock for aiding America's enemies by allowing ill-gotten gains funneled through its accounts.
At HSBC, we uncovered a number of troubling examples in which weak AML systems may have let criminal or terrorist funds pass through. U.S. law enforcement and the regulatory entities have concluded that because of the volume of money, it likely came from the proceeds of illegal drug trade. HSBC's affiliate in London coached the Iranian bank on how to get the payments through the US without inspection.
Unlike at Barclays, the man responsible at HSBC fell quickly on his sword.
As I have thought about the structural transformation of the bank's compliance function, I recommended to the group that now is the appropriate time for me and for the bank for someone new to serve as the head of group compliance. I have agreed to work with the bank's senior management towards an orderly transition of this important role.
Right now, there are 8 separate investigations on both sides of the Atlantic into suspected fraud and illegal banking activity. To many, though, it will appear like the bolt on the stable door is being polished long after the stallion has ridden off into the sunset.